Following a well laid out solutioning process on GMAT questions will allow you to progressively and continuously identify improvements that will in turn help you raise your accuracy and velocity on such questions. In the next 13 minutes, I will demonstrate how I laid out my preparation plan for the Data Insights section of the GMAT and talk through my solutioning process for multi-source reasoning questions. This is day 19 of my GMAT Prep. Today, I'm going to focus entirely on kickstarting my preparation for the Data Insights section of the GMAT. As I described in the last video, the Data Insights section consists of 5 different question types. I plan to focus on 2 question types on each day of my preparation for this section. So if I decide to invest time and effort into 2 practice sets of 45 minutes each on a given day, I will practice only questions of type 1 first and then only questions of type 2 second. There might be days where I'm constrained on time, and that is perfectly okay. Today is actually going to be one of those days because I'm also going to be trying to put some foundations in place. As a result, I only expect to be able to put in time into one 45-minute practice set today. At this point, I also have no idea if questions of one type actually will take me longer on average than questions of another type. So I will restrict my practice sets with a time limit of 45 minutes, while also incorporating for flexibility of 5 to 10 minutes, just in case I'm in the middle of a question with several parts and need the extra time to bring things to a neat close. My goal over these practice sessions is to identify 2 sets of things. First, principles that I should follow to maximize my accuracy on the Data Insights section. Second, principles that will help me boost my velocity on the Data Insights section without having an adverse impact on my accuracy. My focus over the next few days of preparation will be to improve my accuracy only. Once I have plateaued on accuracy, that will tell me that it is time to shift my focus towards improving velocity. Once again, as I described in the past video, with the Data Insights section, you have no choice but to use the online question bank for your practice sessions. This is just because of the nature of questions that show up on this section. In fact, the physical version of the official guide does not feature 4 of the 5 question types except for data sufficiency. So what I want to do just to set up a foundation is to look quickly at the online question bank to plan things out. I want to look at the number of questions that the online question bank offers for each type of question. Based on that, I will set a rough plan for how much I want to get done each day over the next few days. So let's get into it. Alright, so I spent about 10 to 15 minutes or so gathering some quick information to make my plans. Let me just share my notes from all the information that I gathered. In the table that you're seeing on the screen, I have different question types listed as rows, and I have pulled together the number of questions that are available in the online question bank for each question type. As you can see in the second column, against each question type, I'm adding up 3 numbers. So for example, with multi-source reasoning, I'm adding 12, 17, and 14. Those numbers correspond to easy, medium, and hard questions that are available in the online question bank. So in total, I have 43 questions for the multi-source reasoning question type. We know from our previous exploration that the Data Insights section has 20 questions on the final GMAT test that you're required to answer in 45 minutes. So just doing some rough math, if I divide the total number of questions per question type with 20, I end up with the numbers that you're seeing in column 3. And then if I round them out approximately, I end up with the number of practice sets that I can create for each question type given the number of questions available. As you can see, the official guide seems to contain a lot of data sufficiency questions. I do not know if that is representative of the proportion of data sufficiency questions that are likely to appear on the final GMAT test. That said, let me jump straight to the implication of all of this. Overall, I can create 5 to 7 practice sets out of the data sufficiency questions available in the online question bank. Similarly, if I combine all the other 4 question types, I can create somewhere between 6 to 10 practice sets using the online question bank. Looking at all of the other 4 question types combined, I can create about 6 to 10 practice sets. Given these numbers, here is what I plan to do. So once again, we are looking at my study plan where I've just made some additions against the next few days. So on day 19 and 20, I want to focus on data sufficiency and multi-source reasoning questions. On days 21 and 22, I will move away from data sufficiency and start looking at 2-part analysis questions, then move towards table analysis and graphics interpretation questions in the days after that. By day 24, I expect to have exhausted all the questions corresponding to question types that are not data sufficiency. If I run out of those question types, that is the point where I will get into the Data Insights review and start using questions that are made available as part of this. Stated simply, my goal in the next 4 to 5 days is to exhaust as many questions as I can from the GMAT official guide as far as the Data Insights section is concerned. Now, clearly, I might be left with extra data sufficiency questions. To my understanding, data sufficiency questions mostly require similar skills to the one that are required to solve questions on the quant section of the GMAT. So in order to exhaust those questions, I might occasionally take time out of my quant section and invest that into data sufficiency questions. My intention behind wanting to continue practicing the quant section is anyway to keep all my learnings from my preparation for that section alive and well in my muscle memory. Given that data sufficiency questions require mostly the same skills, I think they might also serve that purpose. Of course, I will keep revisiting the quant section by picking up practice sets at periodic intervals over the next several weeks of my GMAT preparation. If you recall from my previous videos, I had also explored additional prep materials on MBA.com earlier. If the need arises, I will not think twice before purchasing additional practice material from MBA.com to continue practicing questions from the Data Insights section as well. If you can't tell already, given my past experience with the GMAT, my opinion is that official GMAT materials are really the only truly useful practice materials for your GMAT preparation. And that is why my entire preparation actually centers around making the best use of official materials that are available from MBA.com. Now that I have a plan, let me jump into 1 or 2 45-minute practice sets for today. In line with the study plan that I briefly showed you on the screen, I will start with the multi-source reasoning question type, and then I will invest whatever time I have remaining into the data sufficiency question type. Let's get going. Alright, so I am 45 minutes in. Towards the end of the time, I noticed that I had navigated to a new multi-source reasoning question, in the sense that the context provided had changed from something about topic X to topic Y. That was an indication that I was navigating into a new set of multi-source reasoning questions, so I decided to put a stop to my study session there. That decision was informed by the fact that I only had 10 minutes left on the clock, and I knew that there was no way I was going to be able to answer all the questions in that set within that tight time frame. I did have to spend a couple of minutes to figure out how the online question bank actually works, but I was able to figure a way out to stop the study session midway instead of waiting for the clock to run out. Let's talk about how I did. Over 45 minutes, I answered a total of 10 questions. The good thing is that I answered all 10 questions correctly. Like I mentioned earlier, I have no idea what a good benchmark for speed is as far as solving each question of the multi-source reasoning type is concerned. So I'm not going to stress about the fact that I only got through 10 questions in 45 minutes. One thing that I want to call out is that the questions that I encountered today were also ones that I encountered in a couple of my early study sessions from day 7 and day 8. Those were the days when I was focused entirely on just getting some degree of acquaintance with the types of questions on the Data Insights section, and as a result, I was not peeling into details of how to improve accuracy or how to improve velocity. So it is completely okay that I encountered those questions again because my focus is different as of date. Here are a few observations I want to call out from memory before I get into performance analysis. I will refer to multi-source reasoning as MSR going forward just for simplicity. As is advertised, MSR questions require you to go through several disparate pieces of information and then connect them to arrive at conclusions. I encountered 3 sets of MSR questions today. The first one had 2 tabs with information expressed entirely in sentences. Even though the information was expressed in sentences, it actually consisted of a bunch of different mathematical quantities such as efficiency and costs. All of that information was then accompanied by a set of 3 questions requiring you to connect various quantities mentioned in the information provided. The second set of MSR questions I encountered today had 3 tabs of information. Each tab had a table along with some text explaining what the table was, as well as providing background information on how to read those tables. Once again, you had to connect information across 2 of those tables or even all 3 of those tables to arrive at answers to certain questions. This set of MSR questions also had 3 questions in total. Finally, the third one, this one had 2 tabs of information. First one was text just describing a situation, and the second tab was a graph which displayed some outcomes. The 2 tabs were accompanied by 4 questions in total. Even as I was solving these questions, I was trying to observe and question the approach I was taking to solve them. I was looking for things such as what are some points where I'm feeling stumped, or what are some points where I'm feeling overwhelmed with information, or what are some areas where things just clicked instantly and I was very confident in knowing what information to look for to answer that question. Observing myself that way actually gives me information on what I'm doing well versus what I'm not, so that I can model what is working and do more of that. Calling out a couple of areas where I struggled, they were as follows. So on the second question, which consisted of 3 tabs of information, I was a little lost on tracking information across those tabs. If I recall, I think all the 3 questions actually required you to look at the different tables to pull some information and bring them together. The reason it became a struggle is because I summarized information a certain way to answer question number 1, and then I realized I needed to use the same information to answer question number 2, but then I was out of space. So one of the things I want to do as I'm going through performance analysis is just think about how I could have used space better when answering this question. Then let's talk about the third set of questions. The way the text in this question is framed, I can see that it deliberately refers to the same thing in 3 different ways. I have actually spoken about this in a previous video, I think it was day 7 or day 8, where I was giving the example of Superman versus Man of Steel versus Son of Krypton. You're using 3 different names, but you're actually referring to the same entity. The only challenge with this question is there are actually 4 different entities, and each of those 4 entities is referred by different names at different points. So clearly that presented a challenge of a different kind, and I want to spend some time thinking about how to approach challenges like that when I encounter something like this again on the GMAT. Those were just a couple quick callouts. Because I answered all of the 10 questions right, I actually want to spend some time reading through the solutions to all these questions so that I can identify what I can do better next time. I will get into that right away. Alright, so that was another 15 minutes. Yes, that is 5050 and not 1515. If you're wondering why I spent 50 minutes on analyzing my performance on questions which only took me a total of 45 minutes to solve, congratulations, you are asking the right questions. There were really two things I was trying to do. First, I was trying to build a mental model of what I think is the most optimal way to solve a data insights question. If you have been following my GMAT prep, you already know that one of my principles for getting good on accuracy on any given section of the GMAT is to standardize the process. I had mentioned this in one of my previous videos where I was practicing questions from the quant section. If you want to get into the details, just go check some of my last 3 or 4 videos and you'll find more details there. Today, I was applying that principle to model an initial version of the process that I want to follow to solve all data insights questions. Creating such a process takes time, and I actually spent a good 20 to 25 minutes just doing that. I was looking at each question, and if I quickly show you my notes, I laid out in green ink how I think I might have solved each of these questions with a higher degree of accuracy while also being efficient in my approach. So for example, on the first MSR questions, I could have laid out the information from the first tab in a tabular format like you're seeing here. The information from second tab was really just 2 different pieces of information. Then on the second MSR question, which consisted of 3 tabs with 1 table each, I could have thought of the tables in a graphical form and imagined it looking something like this, with the dotted lines representing the connections between the 3 tables. If there are data engineers or business intelligence engineers in the crowd here, you might find this quite intuitive because this is really just joining tables in a SQL query. But don't let that overwhelm you if you are not a data engineer. GMAT is not expecting you to do advanced analytics. At the same time, thinking of tabular information in a graphical form like this might actually help you solve GMAT questions faster. On the third MSR question, I really just captured some general notes that I think I should also incorporate in my standardized process. As of this point, I am basing my entire process only on 3 data insights questions. So I already know that the process will evolve and change as I gather more experience. The key is that this gives me a starting point, so going forward, it should be quicker to iterate on the process and improve things. I'll give you a high-level overview of the process shortly. Before I do that, let me talk about the second thing that I was doing, which is confirming that I actually solved all the 10 questions I had attempted correctly and did not just get lucky with an answer somewhere. Turns out I did get lucky on one question. I will describe the question in generalities because I do not want to spoil the question for you, and I can anyway not share the question on screen for copyright reasons. This was a question that required me to add a couple of numbers and then calculate a ratio of the total against a third number. Then I was to round that ratio up to arrive at the final answer. As you can tell, that is a series of operations and you can go wrong anywhere. In my case, I made an error in adding up numbers on 2 occasions, as you can see rounded in red here. However, because there was a round up operation involved, this did not lead to me arriving at the wrong final answer. So while at the surface level, I did answer this question right, if you dig into the details, I had committed a mistake. So superficially, you could say that I answered every question correctly, but if you dig into the details, I actually got this question wrong. Overall, I caught an error only on this question, so thankfully that is not too bad. Now, let me quickly run you through the process that I think I will use for data insights questions going forward. Remember that this is a demonstration video and not a tutorial video, so I'm not going to go into too much detail. While you can use the high-level process that I'm going to describe as a reference, adopting it blindly without knowing the details may not lead to very pleasant outcomes, so do that at your own risk. So here is what my process looks like. I want to attack each MSR question by obviously reading each tab of information one at a time. Either while reading that information or when I'm done reading that information, I want to structure that given information in some form. This could be a table or a diagram. At the same time, I also want to be spatially aware of where each piece of information sits across the 3 tabs. Then I want to read the first of the 3 or 4 questions that correspond to that overall MSR question set. Following that, I will structure a response, which once again might boil down to a formula or a table or whatever it is. From there, I'm able to identify the inputs that I require into that formula. Finally, I combine this with step number 2, and I'm able to recognize where the different inputs are located, which enables me to bring all of them into one place, which is what I'm calling extracting the information. Then all that is left is plugging those things together and calculating to arrive at the final answer. From there, all I need to do is rinse and repeat till I answer all the questions in that MSR question set. So that is all for today. I'm already well over time here, but at the same time, I'm excited because I have been able to identify a relatively streamlined process to attack MSR questions. I'm gonna wind down for the day and catch some sleep. If you have any questions, you will find an Ask Me Anything link in the video description. You will also find links to some resources that will help you with your GMAT prep. I will catch you in the next video.